Welcome back to Deca Facts, where we explore the turning points that reshaped history. In America, laws don't just regulate, they define who we are. From who gets to own land, who gets to vote, and who gets to belong. Each law leaves a mark that echoes far beyond the page it was written on. Today, we're counting down 10 laws that changed America forever. Each one left the country different than it was before, and in some cases, it never looked back. 10. The Homestead Act, 1862. In the middle of a brutal civil war, President Abraham Lincoln signed a law that would open the floodgates to the American West. The Homestead Act offered 160 acres of public land to anyone who was willing to live on and improve it. For many poor Americans and immigrants, it was a lifeline, a chance to own land and build something new. But every acre handed out was land taken from native peoples, often by force. And while the law promised opportunity, it also hardened the frontier and drove deep divisions between settlers and indigenous nations. Lincoln never saw the full effects, but the law helped shape the physical map of America for generations. 9. The Chinese Exclusion Act, 1882. By the late 1800s, anti-Chinese sentiment was boiling over, especially in the West. Economic anxiety mixed with racism created a political storm. Under pressure from his own party, President Chester A. Arthur signed the Chinese Exclusion Act, a sweeping ban on Chinese laborers immigrating to the United States. It marked a turning point, ushering in an era where immigration policy explicitly targeted certain ethnic groups, and similar patterns would follow in the decades to come. Though Arthur had doubts about its long-term effects, the political mood left little room for resistance. The law remained in effect for over 60 years, casting a long shadow over U.S. immigration policy. 8. The Social Security Act, 1935. When the Great Depression shattered the economy, millions of Americans found themselves without jobs, homes, or savings. In response, President Franklin D. Roosevelt introduced a bold new plan, a government-backed safety net. The Social Security Act created retirement pensions, unemployment insurance, and welfare programs that offered stability to a country in crisis. FDR faced stiff opposition from conservatives who saw it as a dangerous expansion of federal power, but he framed it not as charity, but as earned insurance. The law passed, and with it, the foundation of America's modern welfare state was born. 7. The GI Bill, 1944. As World War II neared its end, the question on everyone's mind was what to do with the millions of soldiers coming home. Roosevelt once again stepped forward. This time he signed the GI Bill, officially the Servicemen's Readjustment Act. It provided low-interest home loans, tuition support, and unemployment pay. It helped create the post-war middle class, sent veterans to college, and fueled the suburban housing boom. But the promise of the GI Bill wasn't equally shared. In the Jim Crow South, black veterans were often denied its benefits through discrimination and red tape. The law lifted millions, but left others behind. 6. The Civil Rights Act, 1964. The fight for civil rights had been building for years, in sit-ins, marches, and courtrooms. But it took the raw political skill of President Lyndon B. Johnson, just months after the assassination of John F. Kennedy, to turn momentum into law. The Civil Rights Act banned segregation in public places and outlawed discrimination in employment. Southern senators launched a 60-day filibuster to block it. But Johnson, a Southern politician himself, leaned on moral force, public outrage, and political favors to break it. When he signed it, he knew it would cost the Democratic Party the South for a generation. He did it anyway. 5. The Voting Rights Act, 1965. Just 1 year later, Johnson returned to Congress again. This time, after the nation watched peaceful protesters brutalized on the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma, Alabama. His message was clear: we shall overcome. The Voting Rights Act outlawed literacy tests, poll taxes, and other tactics used to keep black Americans from voting. It gave federal authorities the power to oversee elections in states with a history of discrimination. Johnson signed it into law with the ink of history still wet from Selma, and for a time the law transformed the American ballot box. 4. Title IX of the Education Amendments, 1972. It was short, just 37 words. But those 37 words would open the doors of schools, playing fields, and professions to millions of women and girls. Title IX was part of a broader education bill, signed by President Richard Nixon, that banned sex-based discrimination in any federally funded education program. It passed with little fanfare, but the effects were seismic. Women began entering medical school, law school, and college athletics in numbers never seen before. Title IX didn't just level the field, it gave women access to it. 3. The Immigration and Nationality Act, 1965. For decades, U.S. immigration policy was dominated by quotas that favored Northern Europeans and shut out most of the world. That changed in 1965 when Lyndon Johnson stood beneath the Statue of Liberty and signed the Immigration and Nationality Act. The new law replaced racial quotas with a system based on family ties and job skills. Congress passed it without much fanfare, and few realized how dramatically it would reshape the country. But it opened the door to immigrants from Asia, Africa, and Latin America, permanently diversifying the American population. 2. The Americans with Disabilities Act, 1990. Before 1990, people with disabilities often faced physical and legal barriers to work, education, and public life. Inspired by the civil rights model, activists demanded full inclusion. When President George H.W. Bush signed the Americans with Disabilities Act, he called it a Declaration of Equality. The law prohibited discrimination in employment, transportation, and public accommodations. Getting it passed wasn't easy. Protesters staged dramatic actions like the Capitol Crawl to force lawmakers to confront inaccessibility firsthand. The ADA made ramps, elevators, and accommodations part of everyday life and transformed how the country viewed disability and dignity. 1. The Civil Rights Act of 1968, Fair Housing Act. In the days following Martin Luther King Jr.'s assassination, American cities erupted. Amid the national grief, Lyndon Johnson pushed Congress to act one final piece of unfinished civil rights legislation. The Civil Rights Act of 1968, better known as the Fair Housing Act, made it illegal to discriminate in the sale or rental of housing. It had languished in Congress for years, but King's death shifted the political will. Johnson signed the bill just 7 days after the assassination. It was a law born from tragedy, one meant to fight housing segregation and give Black Americans a real chance at building wealth and security. These weren't just political victories, they were battles. Hard-fought, sometimes delayed for decades, sometimes signed in the shadow of tragedy. Here at Deca Facts, we believe that understanding the laws of the past helps us understand the debates of today and the shape of tomorrow. Tell us in the comments, which law do you think changed America the most? If you found this worth your time, hit like, subscribe, and tap the bell for more stories that matter. Thanks for watching Deca Facts. Until next time.